Imagine a sun-drenched hillside somewhere in medieval France or Germany or Spain. Terraced slopes are carved into the earth, meticulously tended, not with fields of grain nor pastures for livestock. They are dedicated to a different kind of harvest, a harvest of small, jewel-like ore, glistening in the late summer sun. From these humble grapes, a liquid would be born, a liquid that was far more than just a beverage. It was a daily staple, a form of medicine, a symbol of immense wealth and status, and a sacred element at the very heart of religious life. It was a currency of diplomacy, a fuel for celebration, and a source of comfort in a harsh and often uncertain world. We often think of the Middle Ages in terms of stone castles, shining armor, and epic battles. But tonight, we explore a different, more intimate side of medieval life, one measured not in years or victories, but in vintages and casks. Welcome, explorers of the past, to HistoryVerse X. Join us as we journey beyond the grape and uncork the secrets of the art of winemaking in the Middle Ages. The medieval winemaker did not have stainless steel vats, automated presses, or scientific instruments to measure sugar and acidity. Their craft was a blend of ancient tradition, hard-won experience, and remarkable ingenuity. It was a hands-on, deeply physical process, governed by the seasons and guided by the senses. Let's begin in the vineyard itself. The primary tool for pruning the vines was the bill hook, a simple, curved blade on a wooden handle. Its shape was perfectly suited for cutting back old wood and shaping the vines to encourage a healthy harvest. It was a tool as fundamental to the vigneron as the sword was to the knight. For tending the soil around the vines, simple, heavy-duty hoes and mattocks were used to break up the earth and remove relentless weeds. This was back-breaking work, often done by entire families or communities. When the time for harvest, the vendan, finally arrived, the grapes were typically cut from the vine with small, sharp knives or sickles. They were collected not in modern plastic lugs, but in wicker baskets or wooden hods. These baskets, filled to the brim with precious fruit, would then be carried on the backs of workers, their contents destined for the next, and perhaps most iconic, stage of the process, the pressing. The image of people stomping grapes with their bare feet is a romantic and enduring one, and it was certainly practiced, especially in smaller-scale operations or for certain types of wine. Treading the grapes, or pigeage, was an effective, if labor-intensive, way to gently break the grape skins and release their juice without crushing the bitter seeds. Imagine a large, shallow wooden or stone vat. A group of men, trousers rolled up, stomping rhythmically, their legs and feet stained deep purple. It was communal work, often accompanied by songs and a celebratory atmosphere, the first messy, joyous step in the wine's transformation. However, for larger estates, particularly monastic vineyards and those owned by the nobility, a more powerful tool was required: the wine press. Medieval wine presses were colossal structures, marvels of woodwork and engineering. The most common type was the basket press. Picture a massive wooden cage or basket made of heavy-duty slats. The grapes, often already partially broken by treading, would be loaded into this basket. Above it, a huge heavy wooden beam or a giant screw, turned by a long lever, would be slowly lowered. The immense pressure exerted by this mechanism would squeeze the remaining juice from the grape skins and pulp. The precious liquid, now called must, would flow from the bot. Once pressed, the grape must was transferred to its next home for the magical process of fermentation. This was typically done in large, open-topped vats made of wood, though in some regions like Georgia, clay amphorae called cuivre, buried underground, continued an ancient tradition. The medieval winemaker did not understand the science of microbiology. They did not know about the microscopic yeast cells that were naturally present on the grape skins and in the air. To them, fermentation was a mystery, a divine gift, a boiling or seething of the juice that transformed it from a simple, sweet liquid into the complex alcoholic beverage they cherished. They knew that this transformation happened, and they knew the conditions that encouraged it, but the why was a matter of faith and tradition. After the initial vigorous fermentation subsided, the young wine was transferred from the open vats into barrels or casks for aging and storage. The wooden barrel was one of the most important pieces of technology in the medieval world, not just for wine, but for transporting all manner of goods. They were typically made of oak, a practice that continues to this day, as the wood could subtly impart flavor and texture to the wine. However, other woods like chestnut or acacia might also have been used. The cellars of a medieval castle or monastery would have. It is impossible to overstate the importance of religion in the story of medieval wine. Christianity, and specifically the Catholic Church, was the single greatest force in the preservation, expansion, and refinement of winemaking throughout the Middle Ages, especially after the fall of the Roman Empire. Wine was not just a beverage, it was a sacred necessity. It was essential for the celebration of the Eucharist, the central sacrament of the Christian faith. Where wine is consecrated to represent the blood of Christ, every church, every monastery needed a reliable, high-quality supply of wine. This religious imperative led monasteries to become the most important centers of viticulture and winemaking in medieval Europe. Monks, particularly from orders like the Benedictines and the Cistercians, brought a level of dedication, study, and continuity to the craft that was unmatched by secular producers. They were literate, so they could keep detailed records of different grape varieties, soil types, and harvest outcomes from year to year. They had the patience and the long-term perspective to engage in a process of trial and error over generations. They would meticulously observe which plots of land on a hillside produced the best grapes, a practice that laid the groundwork for the famous vineyard classifications we see today in places like Burgundy, France. The concepts of terroir, and named vineyards like Clos de Vougeot owe their existence to the patient work of these medieval monks. Alongside the church, royalty and the nobility were the other great patrons of wine, possessing vast cellars stocked with fine wines from various regions was a powerful symbol of wealth, status, and sophistication. The quality and quantity of wine served at a royal feast was a direct reflection of the host's power and generosity. Kings and dukes would go to great lengths to secure the best vintages for their courts. Wines from specific regions became highly sought after. Gascony, Bordeaux, Burgundy, and the Rhine Valley were all famous for their exports. A king in England might prize a cask of fine red from Bordeaux, while a German prince might covet a sweet white from the Rhine. This royal patronage drove the wine trade. It created economic alliances and sometimes even fueled political tensions. The historical link between England and the Bordeaux region of France, for example, which lasted for centuries during the Middle Ages, was built largely on the English nobility's thirst for its claret. Wine was also a crucial tool of diplomacy. The gifting of a barrel of exquisite wine could seal an alliance, smooth over a political disagreement, or honor a visiting dignitary. It was a liquid currency, a social lubricant that flowed freely in the halls of power, connecting kingdoms and shaping the relationships between the crowned heads of Europe. So, what did these medieval wines actually taste like? This is one of the most challenging questions for wine historians, and the answer is likely very different from what we might expect. First, it's important to understand that medieval wines were generally not aged for long periods like many fine wines are today. Preservation was a major challenge. Without modern bottling techniques, sulfites for preservation, or temperature control, wine was unstable. It was often consumed young, within a year of its vintage, as it could quickly turn to vinegar or spoil. Young wines are often fruitier, but also can be harsher and less complex than aged wines. Furthermore, the palate of the medieval person was quite different from ours. They had a pronounced preference for sweetness. Wines that were naturally high in residual sugar, often made from late harvested or sun-dried grapes, were highly prized. These were the dessert wines of their day, considered luxurious and decadent. But even standard red and white wines were often sweetened before being served. Honey was a common additive, stirred into the wine to make it more palatable, and also to help mask any off flavors or sourness from a wine that was beginning to spoil. Another defining characteristic of medieval wine flavor was the liberal use of spices. Spiced wine, known as hippocras or piment, was immensely popular, especially among the wealthy. Imagine a red or white wine infused with a potent blend of exotic spices that were themselves symbols of wealth, brought from the far corners of the known world by traders. Cinnamon, ginger, cloves, nutmeg, cardamom, grains of paradise. These would be ground up and mixed with sugar or honey, then steeped in the wine, creating a beverage that was aromatic, complex, sweet, and spicy. This practice served multiple purposes. It added flavor and complexity, it demonstrated the host's wealth, and, much like honey, it was an excellent way to disguise the taste of a wine that was less than perfect. The taste of a typical noble's wine might have been closer to a modern mulled wine or sangria than to a dry Cabernet Sauvignon. Unraveling the true, precise taste of a specific medieval wine remains a profound challenge. The evidence is limited. We have written descriptions, but taste is notoriously difficult to describe accurately in words. What one writer called robust or delicate might mean something very different to our modern palates. Preservation methods, as we've noted, were a major factor. The wine that was drunk a few months after harvest would have tasted very different from the same wine a year later, after a long journey in a wooden cask on a rickety cart or a pitching ship. It might have been oxidized, bacterially spoiled, or simply sour. Despite these challenges, we know there was a remarkable diversity of wines produced. It wasn't just a simple case of red or white. Different regions were known for their unique styles. The light red claret from Bordeaux, the powerful reds of Burgundy, the crisp whites of the Loire or the Moselle, the sweet Malmsey wine from Greece, and the strong, fortified wines from Spain and Portugal. Grape varieties were also numerous, though often not recorded with the same precision as today. Many of the famous grapes we know, Pinot Noir, Riesling, etc., have medieval origins, but countless other local indigenous varieties also existed, many of which are now lost to history. Each would have contributed a unique charm. It's crucial to understand that in the Middle Ages, wine was not primarily a luxury item reserved for special occasions. For many people, in many regions, it was a daily staple, a fundamental part of the diet, consumed by people from nearly all walks of life. Why? A key reason was safety. Water sources, rivers, streams, wells, were often contaminated and could be a source of deadly diseases like dysentery and cholera. Wine, due to its alcohol content, was much safer to drink. The fermentation process killed off many of the harmful pathogens. For this reason, even children might be given watered-down wine to drink. It was a source of hydration, calories, and relative safety. Soldiers were given wine as part of their daily rations. Workers were often paid partially in wine. It was integrated into the very fabric of everyday existence. Beyond being a staple beverage, wine was also a cornerstone of medieval medicine. Medical theory at the time was heavily based on the ancient Greek concept of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. It was believed that health depended on these humors being in balance. Different types of wine were thought to have different properties that could affect this balance. Red wine might be prescribed to build up the blood, while a light white wine might be seen as cooling. Wine was also used as a base for countless medicinal concoctions. Herbs, spices, and other ingredients were steeped in wine to create tonics and remedies for a vast array of ailments, from digestive issues to melancholy. It was also used as an antiseptic for cleaning wounds, one of its more genuinely effective medical applications. A wound washed with wine was less likely to become infected than one washed with contaminated water. And of course, wine was the ultimate social lubricant. Its presence was central to almost every form of medieval gathering. At grand feasts and royal banquets, the constant refilling of goblets fueled the celebration, loosened tongues, and reinforced the host's magnanimity. At weddings, harvests, and religious festivals, wine was shared communally, fostering a sense of shared joy and community spirit, even in more humble settings. A shared pitcher of wine at a tavern was the centerpiece of social interaction, a catalyst for storytelling, song, business deals, and friendly arguments. The ceremonial roles of wine were also deeply ingrained. Oaths were sworn over a cup of wine. Toasts were made to seal agreements. Sharing wine was a fundamental act of hospitality, a way of welcoming a guest and establishing trust. From the king's ornate goblet to the peasant's simple wooden cup, wine flowed through the veins of medieval society, marking its rituals, easing its hardships, and animating its celebrations. It was, in every sense, more than just a drink. It was an essential component of life itself. So, what is the lasting legacy of this medieval wine world? How did it shape the wine we drink today? The evolution of winemaking from the Middle Ages to the present day is a story of gradual innovation, building upon the foundations laid centuries ago. The meticulous work of medieval monks in identifying the best vineyard sites directly led to the world-renowned wine regions and appellation systems we have today. The very map of fine wine was largely drawn in the Middle Ages. Key grape varieties, like Pinot Noir in Burgundy and Riesling in Germany, were cultivated and perfected during this period, their unique characteristics recognized and preserved. Of course, there have been monumental advancements. The invention of the glass bottle and the cork in the 17th and 18th centuries revolutionized wine preservation, allowing for long-term aging and the development of more complex, nuanced flavors. The scientific understanding of fermentation in the 19th century, thanks to Louis Pasteur, gave winemakers unprecedented control over the process. Modern technology has introduced stainless steel tanks, temperature control, and sophisticated vineyard management techniques. And yet, for all our modern science and technology, the appeal of medieval winemaking and its influence remains timeless. There is a growing movement in the wine world today towards more natural or low-intervention winemaking, which in many ways echoes the past. Using native yeasts, minimal additives, and traditional techniques, the image of the handcrafted, artisanal wine, born of a specific place and a specific tradition, is a powerful one that has its roots deep in the medieval soil. The world of wine is in a constant state of evolution, yet it remains deeply connected to its ancient past. So, as we contemplate the future of this timeless beverage, with its potential for new grape varieties, new regions, and new technologies, it's worth remembering the journey it has taken. Let's take a moment to reimagine that medieval wine experience. Picture the sights: the rows of vines on a steep hillside, the colossal wooden press creaking under strain, the dim, candle-lit cellar lined with casks. Imagine the smells: the rich earth, the sweet scent of crushed grapes, the spicy aroma of hippocras being prepared for a feast. And imagine the tastes: perhaps rougher, sweeter, spicier than we are used to, but undeniably alive. A direct connection to the land and the people who worked it centuries ago. The legacy of wine is a celebration of human ingenuity, of our connection to the land, and of our enduring desire for ritual, celebration, and simple pleasure. From the sacred chalice of the church, to the boisterous tavern, to the modern dinner table, it has been our constant companion. So let us end with a final toast. A toast to the past, to the medieval monks and peasants who tended the vines with simple tools and profound dedication. A toast to the present, to the vintners who blend ancient traditions with modern science. And a toast to the future of wine, that it may continue to evolve, to surprise, and to captivate our palates for generations to come. Until next time, here at HistoryVerse X, stay curious.